Welcome to Worse Than You with Mo Fry Pasek. I am Mo Fry Pasek, and every week I'm asking today's most captivating artists how they got their acts together. Now, the show is not about their best or most famous, or as I always say, most financially lucrative work. It's about the work that means the most to them, that's symbolic of their creative process and why they make their art. This week's guest is an actor and comedian best known for playing Jerry on NBC's Superstore. He's also appeared on shows like Pen 15, Broad City, and Atypical. And he's performed stand-up around the world, including at our favorite girl, the Edinburgh Fringe Festival, where he staged Chris Grace Sardines, a comedy about death, and Chris Grace as Scarlett Johansson, which is now a Dropout special, which you can watch now. Don't pause this to do that, but finish this and do that. Please welcome to the pod, Chris Grace. Ready, set, show!
Hi, here's your report.
Oh, thanks, Jane. I wish I could hire a whole team of yous.
Try posting a job on LinkedIn. It's the world's largest professional network. Unlike resumes, LinkedIn gives a real-time view into a candidate's skills, experiences, and more.
Huh, let's do it. You're irreplaceable, Jane, but another you would be great.
Find your perfect match with LinkedIn. Post your free job at linkedin.com/achieve. That's linkedin.com/achieve. Terms and conditions apply.
Okay, we did it.
You nailed. You did so good. How are you doing today, Chris?
I'm doing pretty good. I'm happy to chat about creativity and the need for art in this time.
I'm really excited to talk to you today because I've kind of lined up with people that create in a way that's really similar to me or bend reality in many ways. And that process, I think, sometimes makes a lot of people uncomfortable. And so breaking it down almost in a really practical, applicable way is exciting to me because I think it allows you to expand it to its most abstract iteration. So can you give everyone sort of a too long didn't read about your last year's show and this year's show? Because you said you wanted to start with this year's. So I would love to even myself know more about this year's.
Yeah, so 2023 show was called Chris Grace as Scarlett Johansson. It was my first solo show, and it was sort of a twisted biography of Scarlett Johansson seen through the lens of racism and diversity in casting, I would say is the sort of bullet point of that. And then this year, I did a show that was pretty much just about the 5 people in my life that died from 2012 to 2022, which is my oldest sister, my older brother, my mom, my dad, and my partner. And presumably it was for me trying to make it funny.
Sure.
This was the year at Edinburgh where I realized that the thing I get most out of Edinburgh Fringe is the repeated iterations of doing the show and the feeling of developing it from day 1 to day 27. And this was the year I really locked into that being almost the primary benefit for me doing Edinburgh Fringe.
Are those reps for you as an actor, you as a person, or like the actual logistics of the show?
Yeah, so for me, there's not a big separation between me as the performer and me as the writer. So I am tweaking, changing things, but it's more like I just kind of live in the show, and inevitably I either get bored with a chunk or I think of something else to say, or something happens in the audience and I'd say something off the cuff. So by day 27 of this past year's Fringe, there was a lot of, I'd say there's probably 10 to 12 new bits in it that were reactive in some way to a moment that happened in a previous show. And I just kind of locked them in.
I always balance that excitement because I came from stand-up as well, that excitement of a stand-up that you chase a bit that has a great reaction in the room, or the bits that you just want to do no matter what, and you want to add no matter what. And I think that balance is interesting, especially when your show is not quite stand-up. It's not quite, it's in a less definable space.
Yeah. So I had bits in the show this year that were spontaneous. And then I was doing what you're saying. I was chasing them through the rest of the month. And last year, my show, 95% of the show last year, when I would get to a chunk in the show, I would go, I'm so excited to do this next chunk because it's really fun. At the beginning of the month this year, I'd say that was true for maybe like 70% of the show. And there were still parts of the show where I was like, this part is like structural. It connects me to the next part, or I have to say this part because I have to get these facts out about the story. And I would say by the end of the month, I had filled in those spots with enough fun stuff for me to do. And some of that was accidentally doing something fun and then trying to figure out how I could do it every day.
I love that. Well, finding a better way to get the information across, like in a way that you enjoy as an artist.
Yeah. And also it was just a factor of if you tell the same story over and over, you do get sort of bored with it. And if you have a comedic mind, you start to like touch it up a little bit in places. So that happens naturally.
Oh, my director and I, Sudie Green, she's incredible, but we come from both improv and comedy. And the way we had to give ourselves an aggressive no more edits, because we would just constantly like in rehearsal, like, oh my God, let's add this. Let's make this whole new, because it's fun. It really is that creation space when you're like, we could do this.
Yeah, I don't have a no more edits position on any of my shows. So even my Scarlett Johansson show, which is from 2023, is still being edited.
Really?
And I brought Scarlett back to Edinburgh this past year for 5 nights as sort of like a reprise.
Oh, okay. So that was, but was that reprise giving you added value to the nature of the show and where you want to take it? Or was it just fun to go and mess around a little?
Scarlett was a pretty good success in 2023. And there's a fair number of people that wished they had seen it. So, but also like in all practicality, it was a way for me to do 5 nights of shows that would sell relatively well and help me defray the cost of going to Edinburgh.
Yeah.
So I'll probably bring Sardines back in 2025 as well in a similar way because I had enough press and good responses from people that I think I can like sell those shows and sort of like a proven commodity. And it's a show like, it is nice to have a little bit of when people say, oh, I saw your show and I've been telling all my friends to see it. When can they see it? So like next Fringe, they'll get a chance to do that.
Okay. I love that. Because I ask a lot of logistical questions, but I think it's important, especially when we talk what we say, like clay in the mound of like how you literally make something and write something versus, and I watched your Dropout special and you spoke about, or I think it was maybe in a behind the scenes where you said you're not necessarily afraid of vulnerability and speaking to these vulnerable topics. And you defined it as irrational confidence. And I kind of grapple in my piece with the idea that information is not intimacy and that sometimes really vulnerable things can jolt us into being present and listening to other people. But sometimes it is, what seems vulnerable, like talking about personal trauma or talking about death, isn't necessarily the vulnerable thing for me. So when you say that you're unafraid of that vulnerability, of talking about these topics, is it because it is a need, it is a fearlessness, or maybe because something else is vulnerable for you versus the actual information of your experience?
I think in the shows and in my stand-up, I don't know that it comes from a need, and this might sound strange, but it is just a skill that I'm really good at. And so I do think that I'm better than most people at like my ability to shed as many artifices around that moment and just be there in that split second present on that stage with that audience. And so in a very like, I don't know, crass brand kind of way, it's like, like if I was a basketball player and I was really good at dunking, I would just
I hear you.
Dunk a lot.
I'll be present on your asses. I'm Ram Dass up in this
I mean,
bitch.
in a way, like when I first read like Eastern philosophies, I was very like, oh yeah, this is what I do already. And I do feel there might be some kind of genetic link back to the Tao Te Ching or whatever.
Yes,
yeah,
100%.
where I would read these things and just feel very in tune with them. Also, growing up in America, where it's a very Christian nation, a lot of like spirituality that I grew up with didn't really connect with me. And in my family, we didn't go to church or anything like that. So when I first started to read that kind of stuff, it was connecting.
Did you have like a Christian faith though? Or
no, we didn't.
Okay, it was just culturally the world. Yeah.
Yeah. I grew up in Houston, Texas. So there's a lot of
culturally for sure.
Cultural Christianity there. But also like the same way that people started to reach for like meditation and stoicism and even like yoga. During those times I was sort of encountering those things and they resonated with me. So I feel like I brought a lot of that into my performance as well.
Oh, well, that's magnificent. And I'm always curious as to what creates that. And one, I mean, you look at epigenetics, I'm sure there is something in the line of, history that either with the way you process things or innately. But I also think in this lifetime, one of the great gifts of experiencing adversity in any capacity, whether it be race, whether it be sexual orientation or physical violence, whatever it is, I do think if you're able to survive, if you're able to get through and find the gift, a gift for me has always been presence, because I go, well, when things were really dark, I didn't see a future. I didn't want to look at the past, and I didn't want to dissociate because there was like lots of nice things here. Mm. And so if you translated that, which I think you do, to art, to other circumstances and relationships, it's really felt. And when you say it's a skill, it's probably because, like you even say in your special, you can either give up or you can find a perspective that works. And usually that's just being really present.
Yeah. And I think it is a muscle. Like, I think I was naturally inclined towards that sort of moment, but I also think it's a muscle that you have to intentionally practice in terms of your ability in any circumstances to try to stay present and not sort of project what you're saying into the future or the past.
So I'm wondering how you're able to like sort of affirm your own inclinations in that way. I think that's a very powerful skill as well.
I think one of the skills is just to be super okay when you fail at it. Like a genuine challenge, I think, for some people would be to sit in your chair quietly for 3 minutes and not meditating, not trying to meditate, not trying to achieve anything, just sitting quietly in a chair for 3 minutes, I think would be very difficult for a lot of people. But it's like anything. Like, I just got this board, and it's a board with like a slack line between it. Like, imagine like an upside down skateboard, and you.
Oh, I hear you. I hear you have to balance,
on it, right?
Yeah.
In the thing that comes with it, they say that the goal is for you to balance on one foot on the strap for 10 seconds. I am currently able to do it for less than 2 seconds. I literally have it against a wall where I'm like, I'm going to fall. But I mean, I don't think being present or any like sort of soft social skills or meditative things, I don't think they're any different. I think that if you're out of practice or you haven't done it regularly, I think sitting quietly for even 90 seconds might be hard for some people. But then I think that it sort of goes hand in hand with also being okay with like beginner mind on a lot of things, Sure. All of these things, like even going to Fringe for the first time. I have friends that want to go to Fringe, and I'm like, hey, you should go to Fringe and you should put no expectations on how successful your show is, because preloading a bunch of expectations into how the month should go is just a recipe for sadness, in my opinion.
Did you learn that though because you had them and they were failed, or because you are the type of person that was able to go here without them?
No, I still struggle with those expectations, but I've also produced other shows before, and I've been in shows that were very much commercial failures at the Fringe. I was in a play. The play had a cast of 8. We were in the Assembly Studios, Studio 1, which seats 288 people. And
big girl.
Our average audience was 6, I would say. And one day we did the play for 2 people in a theater of 288 seats. Oh. And I wasn't producing on that show, but I felt the pain of that, So I was very clear-headed about expectations. But I still struggle with them, because what happens is no matter how low your expectations are, everyone's expectations of the month start to get reframed as you go through the month. Because either you're adjusting upwards or downwards, but like if you like this year's show didn't sell as well as last year's show in the first 7 days. And so then I'm like comparing, I'm contrasting, and there's so much out of your control at the festival. Like this year, the Paris Olympics were at the same time as the first week of the show. So a lot of people said it was that. I mean, who knows? I
didn't even consider that. But I hear you on that and that innate comparison. But with that moment where you felt the sadness, right? Even if you hadn't produced it, was it because there is that pressure to like have, people support you there or know it, or because like it was a piece that you really cared about that wasn't being seen? Because that is like that complicated where you hear people talking so much about the value of numbers and you're kind of like, wait, why do I want those numbers?
Yeah, it's probably both. I mean, I definitely super proud of this year's show, but it's also hard not to get into this comparative quantitative mindset, because my show in 2023 sold like 94% of my seats. And
wow,
so
that's incredible.
It was a really high bar, probably unrealistic to try to compare it to this year's. And I know that like my 2023 show had a much more easily marketed concept, because I would show my flyer to people in the beer gardens and it was a picture of me dressed up as Scarlett Johansson, and people would start laughing already. Like they would just take the flyer because it was funny. And then this year my flyer was, this is a show about death.
Wait, I never got to see, I was so upset. I never got to see your show.
Yeah.
And because it's so hectic and I was,
Oh, yeah.
And like producing mine and being in mine and doing, and it was just like, which you would have had me right there running.
Love, exciting and new. Hello, Hannah Waddingham here. Have you seen the fabulous new Sun Princess? World-class entertainment, exceptional dining, and the greatest pizza ever. It's a love.
Don't miss our Come Aboard sale with up to 40% off and free room upgrades. Visit princess.com or call your travel advisor to book. Princess Cruises. Terms and restrictions apply. Offer ends 2/28/25. Ships of Bermudan and British Registry.
Live from Radio City Music Hall, it's the SNL 50 Homecoming Concert, featuring performances by Arcade Fire, the B-52, Backstreet Boys, Bad Bunny, Bonnie Raitt, Brittany Howard, Brandi Carlile, Chris Martin, Dave Grohl, David Byrne, Devo, Eddie Vedder, Jack White, Jelly Roll, Lady Gaga, Miley Cyrus, Mumford & Sons, Post Malone, The Roots, and more. Celebrating 50 years of SNL music, February 14th at 8 p.m. Eastern. Catch it live on Peacock.
You seem very ambitious in what you want to challenge yourself to make funny. And I think the people who do that are so exciting because they are people who are willing to fail. You're saying, here's something that is usually not funny.
Yeah. I think that it's just, those are the things I tend to think about, especially Fringe. Sometimes I do sometimes see shows where I think, like, I do think sometimes, why did you make this? I don't understand what this is for,
because I also like always expect things to be the best possible version. If you give me a premise that's good, I'm like, let me see this. This is going to be genius. I'm coming in like I'm like Earth parent and everyone is my child. And then when people I find it disrespectful when people like, I do. I'm like, this audience came, even if it's one person, and like you're not delivering vulnerability or like the bit or even like respect to the person's time in having a fully fledged idea or abandoning your own ideas mid-stage. I got pretty kind of snobby about it. I got pretty angry because I'm like, if it's bad, do it with your chest. Be bad with your chest. Like, we're here for you,
Yeah, I think people have different relationships to how directed they are, because I know that people have different levels of what you're talking about. When the last third, they sort of like go away from what you thought the idea was. And sometimes you want a director to be in there and say, no, we need to double down on this now.
Yes.
But also, I guess I try to carry some, like, hold some space for people, because like I also know that like on July 28th you're like running out of time. You are, like a chicken with its head cut off, trying to get your posters and your flyers and all this stuff,
For sure. Logistically. I think I mean holistically, because I think about, and it's not even like I'm blaming the other people. I always have a good time watching anything. And I think it's why people like you have success and Demi Adejuyigbe has success, because there might be people who are comparing themselves going, well, my show's good. Why isn't it? And it is that subtle respect that maybe someone who's just consuming might not notice. But the way you both land the plane, right? And the end is so crucial, especially in a meta piece. And the way you don't just allow it to keep going forever, the way you actually give something that could be infinite a close, I think is what makes you a master of this and so successful, and why people maybe don't know how to say it but want to go to see your show versus another, because you take care of them. You close it. You don't leave them to assume everything.
I mean, I think that comes from a little bit of like theatrical background, because I was very theater focused in high school and college, and even a little bit like I was in a theater company that we started after college. But I think at least from the kind of work that I come from in theater, or the work that I admire, there's a lot of consideration given to the final moments of any given theatrical experience. Maybe more than stand-up, where stand-up you're sort of like, yeah, we'll just end on a big laugh and get out of there. Whereas I think in theater, there's a lot of consideration about, can we burn an image into someone's eyes at the last second and have that stick with them afterwards? And I think a lot of stand-up shows would probably benefit from thinking along those lines.
Oh, well, you know what excites me about you saying that is, can we burn an image into someone's mind? And what I read about the overview of Sardines is that you literally ask someone in the opening, you ask your audience to pretend there's a projector and use their mind to create an image.
Yeah.
So when you're making Sardines, right, is that something you begin with? Where does it start and where do you fill it in? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. So that started because it was just a direct response to how much crap I have to bring when I went to do Scarlet. So I brought Scarlet back for 5 days this past August. And for 5 nights of doing the show, I had a full other luggage that I had to check just to do Scarlet. And so, I mean, I can frame it as this like artistic challenge, and it did become a very, I think, beautiful part of Sardines. But the beginning of Sardines was like, I don't want any tech cues. I don't want any costume changes. I don't want any props. And it was a challenge to me to see if I could still make the material relevant without any...
circumstance creates it. Yeah.
Yeah. Without the material theatricality. I was going to say, one of my reviews was that the show wasn't theatrical enough. And I actually feel like it's extremely theatrical because of what I'm asking the audience to do. How
did you interpret like not theatrical enough? But does that mean not enough stuff?
Yeah. Just as the very first thing I asked people to do in Sardines is I asked them to imagine a projector projecting images onto the wall. And the review basically implied that I should have rented a real projector. And I was like,
that's so funny.
Then you were out minute 1 of this show.
That's also a little bit like, I love the Mona Lisa. They should have given her a smile though. Like,
right.
It's like,
it should have been bigger.
Yeah. Like, try and agree with the artist for the little bit, you know?
Yeah. I find some of the reviews annoying or vexing, I would say. But sometimes I'm just like, oh, I think you were just never on board with this premise. Like, there was no winning you over. Like, you didn't go for it from the beginning.
Yeah, people are going to see what they can see, you know, and you can't really control that. And I think that is a healthy sort of present mindset of like, I hope you like it. I like it. I would love to be loved. It's nice. I can't control it if you don't get it.
I mean, there's also, this is interesting too, I found this year. There's a couple of reviews that have specific criticisms about Sardines that I actually don't disagree with. One specific one is like, they wish they had more stories about some of the people that died, right? And I actually don't disagree with that. I also feel that at Fringe, your show can basically be like 55 minutes, you know? Yeah. And this was what resulted out of the time that I had, the structure that I'm trying to build, the amount of time I could spend talking about people in the show. And it was interesting to just be like, if that's what bothered you about the show, it's totally valid. I just didn't logistically feel that it could fit into the show.
Yeah, that's a tough part too, because it's like, in a perfect world, like the end, I want fireworks. It's like, well, we're not going to get that.
Yeah.
And so I think there are those compromises and separating self from that. So with writing, when it comes to this, are you sitting down in the morning and writing pages? Are you experiencing sadness and channeling it through this? Like, how does that work on an actual day-to-day basis for this?
So what I've figured out, at least for these 2 shows, my work process was book spaces or try to get gigs where I'm obligated to do the show for someone before I've written it.
That's what I did too.
So the big one for Sardines was I was slated to do a reading of it in April at my friend's arts festival called the Fusebox Festival in Austin, Texas. And the reading was on a Thursday. I was officially booked to bring back Scarlett Johansson to that festival because I had done it there the year before. So this is sort of like, hey, we're bringing back this show. This is the one you buy tickets for. And so when I went to Austin, a couple months before, I said, hey, by the way, can I just do a reading of my new show there too, as like a cheap $5 thing?
Workshop type.
And they were like, great. So that was on a Thursday, and I had been thinking about the show for several months, maybe about a year. And then if the show's on a Thursday, I would say on Sunday night, I wrote like the entire 21-page first draft.
I love hearing this. I love it. I adore it.
But for both shows, I tend to do I have a music stand, I'm doing a reading of it type thing. Mm-hmm. And then I knew that I was going to do Hollywood Fringe, which is another 5 performances. And so I feel very confident that if I'm up in front of people doing a reading or doing a performance, that out of my subconscious, it will generate, oh, I think this should be better. I think I should change this line. I should cut this part, whatever. And now all I have to do is just put myself in front of the audience that many times. And I feel good about what I'll come out with. So I didn't spend a ton of time in between that reading or Hollywood Fringe or Edinburgh, at my desk revising. For me, it's very productive to be in front of people saying these words and then making a video of it, doing my best to watch that video, which can be hard.
It's hard. Yeah, I hear you.
Yeah, I feel like it sort of is growing in the moment of being up on stage with those people. And that's why I started with, actually. It was I realized that even when I got to Fringe, it kept changing and kept improving. And so for 2025, currently, this is what I'm thinking. I really hate all of the part where I'm trying to worry about ticket sales, where I'm trying to worry about reviews. So my current plan is in 2025 to do a show that's specifically labeled as work in progress. I'm not going to pay for any extra posters. I'm not going to hire a publicist. I'm just going to do 27 shows in a row and see what happens, because that was the most rewarding part of the whole thing. And all the other stuff is both stressful and super expensive.
This episode is brought to you by Nerds Gummy Clusters, the sweet treat that always elevates the vibe. With a sweet gummy surrounded with tangy, crunchy nerds, every bite of Nerds Gummy Clusters brings you a whole new world of flavor. Whether it's game night, on the way to a concert, or kicking back with your crew, unleash your senses with Nerds Gummy Clusters.
This episode is brought to you by Abercrombie. There's nothing better than the perfect jean and going out top combo, or an outfit that perfectly matches your plans. Abercrombie's relaxed jean goes with every occasion. Date nights with something lace, or daytime with a cozy sweater. And their barrel jean will surprise you. It's the trend that will become a staple in your wardrobe. Abercrombie denim comes in tons of rises, fits, and washes. Find your perfect pair online or in store.
It had me grappling a lot with this idea of branding and pitching, and I am within my friendships, I'm very loud and sociable, and on the stage I'm I can be big, and that's where I take up space. So then it always makes me laugh when people are like, why can't you flyer? Why can't you whatever? And I'm not kidding. We had to get an intern to flyer for me because I threw up the first time I tried to flyer.
Aww.
And my body can feel it right now, because it's my hands are shaking, because there is no facade. What we talk about, there is no, I'm doing a bit for my friends. There is no, it is just me alone going, hi, here's my art project with stranger. Do you like it? And so my whole body was ugh. And then people were like, what? That should be easy for you. And I'm like, no, famously artists have veils of what? And Fringe asks you constantly to drop your veil, to just be you and ask for this and do this and then immediately drop into this. And it's time does that. The circumstance, the venues make you do that. It's, you really have to grapple with who you are and what that means and if it has value to at any given time.
Yeah. I mean, I've been to Fringe with shows that somebody else produced, and I've been with shows that I produced that I wasn't in, and I've been there like with my own show that I'm producing. And the pressure you feel when on day 3, you've done 2 previews, you're open on a Friday, and 2/3 of the seats are empty. And you think, oh, this morning I was going to flyer, but I didn't.
Yeah.
You know, or I should go flyer after the show in the evenings when people are at the beer gardens. And, you know, I should pay $500 for these Facebook ads, whatever. And I will say one of the parts that's difficult about Fringe is that the flyering and the advertising does work.
Oh, it works. Oh, it completely does. Yeah.
So it's one of those things. I think like in a lot of culture that we have now, I'm actually not convinced that like if I do a stand-up show in LA and I take out $500 of Facebook ads, that it makes any difference whatsoever. But in Edinburgh, if you or you hire someone to flyer for 4 hours a day, the days that you do it versus the days that you don't, it's like, oh, you can ask people like, why'd you come to the show? And they're like, oh yeah, your guy handed me a flyer.
Well, because it's almost like early days of advertising, right? Because there's oversaturation we have now. So everyone in LA is getting a Facebook ad for everything. There's no value. Whereas Edinburgh, people go and they say, I'm going to get handed this. I can only be handed 10 a day. Otherwise, I'll deny them. And then they have those to choose from. Like truly, just from a human psyche perspective, it is more effective.
Yeah. So that's tough to live with on the days when you're too tired to go flyer because you're sort of resigning, like you're sort of admitting to yourself, okay, I'm not going to go flyer today, which means when I do the show, there's going to be 10 fewer people in the audience because I didn't flyer. And that, I think, can lead to a very like emotionally taxing cycle during the Fringe.
What happens to you? Like, because I can't look at that. Like I can't, because otherwise I'll be like, you didn't set yourself up for success. Like you don't want it. Like, do you move forward? Do you get depressed? Like, how does that manifest for you?
Probably manifests as I will try to do better the next day, which is really all you can do.
That's how I got through, because it was kind of like, oops. Like, and I also kind of live in the world where I'm like, there was no world in which I was able to do that. like,
yeah. I mean, at the same time, because I'm not a 100% fully integrated positive person, sometimes I do feel like my friends who go to Fringe with projects, like I had a friend who was doing a stand-up show who has some like notoriety, like who has some facial, like face recognition in terms of being a known person. And they just didn't want to do flyering. They didn't want to do press. They didn't want to do radio interviews or whatever. And then they didn't have that many people show up at their show. And I was like, you know, it was their first year at Fringe. And I'm like, that is the game there, unfortunately. And then they were complaining that they didn't have enough people come see their show. So like, I don't know how to reconcile that.
That I can't. So when I because I was just me there. I had to do all my tech. I have 2 Q labs, 2 computers with a Korg and my own tech and a projector. And I would have to like re-sew my costume every day. And like, it was so much to handle that I was kind of like, okay. And then, you know, thankfully we were really critically acclaimed. Like when critics came, it was great. People in the seats, not for me that time. Not a lot of them. And it was funny because to me, I was very dumbfounded by the people who would complain about that. Because I'm sitting there going like, you either have to accept it. Like we know the nature of this. We set up very clearly what will get you success or butts in seats. And so when I couldn't do those things and there weren't butts in seats, it was okay. I was going to get the best performance that day because that's all I was can control. But it is sometimes I would have to leave a lot of those little tables because I was confused by the community that was formed around griping about controllable things. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, although that's also partly UK culture.
Stand-ups. Is it really?
Oh, yeah. I mean, like, so I've gone to Fringe a lot. So like people just like to complain and I like to complain as well. Like that's also just a thing that, you know.
I think that's the athlete. And I started as an athlete at 3. And it's like, if you were complaining, it's like, go run, like go do push-ups.
I think that I have yet to meet someone like from London that if you have tea with them and you start complaining about things, I've yet to meet one that says, all right, that's enough complaining now. and you know what? They're annoyed by us because they see us as being sort of relentlessly cheerful. So, you know, even the most like dour American still seems like a cheerleader to them.
I tend to think of it as my more Slavic roots, though, because I don't cheerlead. I go, then do something. I'm like, when someone is like emotionally complaining, I'm like, wait, but you haven't bent you over backwards killing yourself to figure it out yet. So why do you get to complain? Like,
yeah.
Also, it's like not warm.
Also, if you have Slavic roots, like, you know, because I have roots, my family's from China, you probably have a core of being able to like endure things, which my family has, which is useful for comedians.
I agree. I think it's also like I'm now, as I'm older, I'm going back and appreciating the things I endured because I am so used to it. I didn't realize I was enduring. Do you know what I mean? Like it is. I think that is an aspect too, where once you can get above water, I think it is important to go back and give yourself appreciation, even if you didn't feel at the time it was enduring.
Absolutely. And then the balance for people like us to find then is, where are situations where, oh, you shouldn't endure this, you should say something, you know? I think that's a tough thing, because I think that I was always like this person that was like, you know what, in the American dream, all you have to do is work as hard as you can to be good at what you're at. And if you keep your head down, you will be recognized. And the people that are the best at comedy or whatever will rise to the top and be recognized. And I think there's many examples that is not the case.
Oh, I think that has to do with also letting people let you down or fail. Like one day at Fringe, because I had no storage, so I had to every day truck my podcasting gear, 3 laptops, and my cork pad in my backpack. So it was a big weight. Because I couldn't afford the Ubers or they were too long, I would have to walk every day. A lot of logistical things, which I'm fine with. I just prep for them. But it was a mile from my place I was staying, and I got to the theater in time to get dressed, and I look and I'm missing one of the laptops. And I was like, what do I do? And so then I went in, and they were having issues with the projector, and they were like, all shows are canceled. Oh. So then I was like, no, they can't be. I didn't even think about all these alignments. So then I fixed the projector, which was truly just an HDMI cord that was plugged in the wrong thing. and then, which is also enduring the fact that because the way I look, the way I talk, everyone kept going, how'd you do that? It's a miracle. Like, we're going to have to ask the tech guy how you fix that so we can fix it next time. And I was like, no, I know what I'm doing. And so already, whatever, I then go, okay, I got to go get that laptop. I run a 9-minute mile from the Meadows to Queen Street.
Okay, that's pretty far.
3:30. And it's a lot of people too. And I have my backpack on, so it's the wait. So I run a 9, which is the craziest thing now I look back. And then it's like Times Square essentially. And so then I run back. I get the laptop, I run back. And then my show is pretty, it covers sexual assault. It's an hour of me talking. At the end, I'm sobbing, and then I sing a song, and I'm sweating. I get in my thing, and then it's showtime. And again, I don't say it. I think a lot of people say this to be like, oh, work hard or whatever. And I'm truly saying this to go, I got on a call with my therapist that night, and she goes, what if there wasn't a show? What if you just, oops, like something fucked up? You didn't have to survive, endure, make it all okay, break your body to make it happen for 3 people that day.
Right.
And in the way you're talking about, I hadn't even considered that. I hadn't considered being like, oh, I need more help. I need someone to get this. I had been like, oh, this is just what I have to do.
Yeah. I also would be interested that day if you didn't run back and just did whatever version of the show you could do without that laptop. For those 3 people, that might be interesting.
I know, it's so fun. The other version of the laptop I control the other character, and it's just me on stage, and I play all her lines. I already have scenes where I'm talking to no one, but the idea all scenes talking to no one.
Well, the reason I bring it up is because, like, first of all, it's Fringe. So you could, like, do the day where 3 people show up to see the show. You don't have the laptop. You cast one of the people as the other character.
So fun.
You know, and we do all that. We run around, we go get the laptop, and then you come back, and that's the day that all the electricity goes out. And, you know, for 6 hours, there were no shows anywhere in George Square.
Which was...
Yeah, that was a while. Luckily, my show was before that, but...
oh, gosh.
Yeah.
Thank God you, like, slipped under the radar of that, because people were like... I know, and I agree with you. There's parts where, like, at maybe some of the most sensitive points in my piece, the entire tech would go out, and I would just start improvising with people, and I'd be like, have you seen this episode of Buffy where she actually is in an insane asylum? And then people would be like, are you talking to me? And those moments are great. It is just hard to know when to take up those moments. But, so, you're talking about death in your piece, and it's personal, right? So, when you're driving the car, I think anyone who knows how to do that, how does that feel for you? Like, did you feel like you needed to be emotionally ready to speak on these things so you could live in the moment and mess around? Like, what is that process like with figuring that out?
I definitely didn't figure out what I thought about these things before. In some ways, I'd say for both of these shows, creating the show is my way of figuring out what I think about them.
Interesting, like a pensive almost. So that was a Harry Potter reference.
Oh, yes.
Well, it's a Dumbledore puts his thoughts and memories into a bowl to watch them from an outside perspective so he can better understand how he feels.
Yeah, actually, that's a great description. I will call it that from now on.
Go for it, yeah.
So as far as the emotions of it, I do come from a school of acting I don't have a strong requirement that I feel a specific way at any point in either of these shows. And I mean, this goes to being present, but like whatever I'm feeling that day is what they get. I would say in the month run of this show, which was very emotional for people in the audience, like my variation of whether or not I was crying at this point or not crying at this point, it's not super directly related to like the way the audience felt. Because I think in a way, at least this is the way I see my shows. Like, I'm just trying to sort of cast a spell, and sort of the show is happening in your head more than mine. And I'm trying to give you the tools to sort of have a similar experience to what I thought of when I was creating the show. And either I cast that spell or I don't. And I've noticed that like those reviews that were sort of negative, if I don't cast the spell on you, it doesn't matter what I do. It doesn't matter if I cry in this part or not cry in this part. You'll just think it's okay or bad, right? And then if I'm able to cast that spell on you, then it's freedom for both of us, because then I don't have to cry at that one point. I can just tell you what the story was, and you'll almost tell the show to yourself. I mean, that's just like the way people have reacted to it has felt like that.
Well, pure mirror, right? Like people get to see what they want to see in you, but I'm wondering if the on switch for the spell, because that sounds very deeply rooted in writing. And I'm wondering as an actor, is the switch already done in the writing, or is it whether or not you are crying, your experience on stage of speaking those words?
I'd say, well, my instinct is to say it's not in the writing. I think that it's almost in the structure of things, not necessarily like the individual words I write from one page to the next, but I think I have sort of integrated just a way that I think a one-person show should like place seeds for an arc and a climax and like I was saying, like this sort of crystalline last moment. So yeah, I think almost maybe the structure is doing more work than the individual writing.
Meaning you can play on the day because you've already done the structural work?
I think so. And also I think that it's the structure plus the random stray thoughts that I'm having about the things I'm saying on that day. So I might start describing something about my mother, and it might just honestly, I might just see someone in the audience that looks like her, and it's going to change the emotionality of the next 3 minutes, you know? And that's not to do with the writing. That's just to do with being available to the people that show up that day.
That's such an incredible actor, though. I really mean it. Like, people pay so much for acting classes just to react off their scene partner without straying from character or script.
Yeah.
And I have only understood the value of someone like you who's able to do that in experiencing it, because similarly, I'm usually crying about something completely unrelated when I have to cry. And because that part of the play isn't for me to work through. I don't think I'd be present if it was. So I'm crying about something else. I'm crying about how stressful Fringe has been. And then there was one day where I had an audience of very young women, and they were crying, which meant to me, you've had this experience, and it made me cry. I'll cry thinking about it now. It's like, you're too young to have this, which of course they aren't, because I was younger than them when I experienced assault or whatever that is. And so then I am sitting there in a scene where I'm not supposed to be crying, where crying is a crucial release later, and just crying because I'm looking at these girls. And as an actor, you do have to work that in to not be something a failure, but to be a deep presence in that moment, because the audience is your scene partner. And I think in the way you write, that's true too, because they're your collaborator. They tell you so much about whether the thing you're trying to achieve is happening.
Yeah, I definitely think that they are your scene partner is a big note to take for anyone doing a solo show. And I also think that whatever you need to do to be as permeable as possible to that moment, so that when they unexpectedly laugh at something that's never caught a laugh before, that you're willing to go off of your rails of how you think the show should be going to maybe explore that. And I don't even mean like say something about it. I just mean like let it affect you. And then also I think that whatever else you have to do to integrate all of the other, I think this is a big challenge, is like all the other technical aspects that you have to deal with, which is in your case, like you're probably triggering Q-labs and stuff like that, right?
Yeah.
In fact, probably this year's show, what a huge benefit for me was there's literally one tech cue in the entire show.
Are you serious?
Yeah. So
that's heaven. That's hard to do.
So then I am not burdening myself with anything in terms of, except just like doing the show. And that's probably just reflective of like solo shows are hard.
Well, but that's like, I was telling my friend Tim Platt is my creative collaborator, and we joke where it's like the simpler your staging is, the more powerful and engaging you have to be. Like there's less distraction. So that is a huge feat.
Yeah. I mean, it's like, then I see someone's show with like cool lighting and sound effects, and I'm like, oh, like their show's cool.
Yeah, no, I do the same.
But I think that the challenge for the actor is what you're talking about. You're available in that moment. You have this sort of quasi-mystical thing happen between you and these women that see the show that day. And the show is happening between you and them. So it's not like you're giving them the show. They're not like, it's in this space between us, right? It's your ability to be available for that moment. And remember that you can't turn your left shoulder this way because that light gets blocked. And if your light gets blocked, your face isn't lit. And if your face isn't lit, everybody on house right can't see what you're doing. And so I think that is like one of the more difficult integrations you have to have as an actor.
And to the skill of what you're saying you've experienced in life, I think a lot of kids who have maybe had to code switch or perform identities are able to find the ways in which they can connect through all the technical things, you know? And so it's like, I might have to be thinking of putting my finger on the cork board, and I can't break connection with those girls. I cannot break that connection. And it's very similar to, you know, say you grew up in a chaotic home, and it's like, you know, that to get your needs met, right, you might need to perform something for your parents while still maintaining your needs, and like, you know, or make yourself smaller for your friends, but at the same time figure out a way to get what you want. And it is those lenses that we do every day, but intentionally.
Yeah, I mean, because like maybe one of the nice things about doing art is people pay you money to be manipulated.
Do you feel this way?
I mean, I think like everything we're doing in terms of like, we put this sound cue in here, and like, you know, we have the light hit me in a certain way, and like, it's all a form of manipulation in a way. And like even as far as I think like, oh, I can be so present, I can be so vulnerable and be so truthful, you will never get to a point where there isn't like the artifice of like, hey, we're all sitting in the dark. I have a program in my hand.
Yeah.
I put myself in this position. I'm giving you some power as a performer, but like, it's never really going to be like 100% vulnerable and truthful.
Well, that's the hard part because it's also like, the quanta observed. It's never actually going to be directly looked at.
Yeah.
It has to be, entangled, the side, whatever it is. It's devastating, but also there's no there. There's no actually really looking at the thing.
Yeah, I mean, I think the more art can tell people that for most things in life there isn't an objective truth, I think the better.
So for you, what is the vulnerable part? Like, because I get that you have this fearlessness and this skill and this talent, but what is the thing that you have to go, okay, do it anyway, Chris, or okay, this is hard, even if it's just at the computer or alone? Like, what is that part for you?
That is a tough question. I mean,
it might not be hard. It might be hard accepting that it's not hard.
so from where my brain is all the way up to the show being performed, I don't have any resistances along those lines. I think my resistance shows up in the off hours, not in the creative process, but in the moments of like I know if I have to do a show like what today we're recording on a Tuesday, if I have a show on Thursday, I don't feel much blockage to the flow of the creative process that I have to do for Thursday. What I feel resistance in is the okay, I have the show Thursday. Next week I should book another one where I get up again and revise it and do again. But I don't want to. You know what? Next week I really don't want to do anything. I just want to I just want to relax and play computer games and do that. So I feel resistance in the like in my fantasy world, most of my resistances are in the part where I would like a manager to like do all that stuff for me,
I completely understand. Well, because it's also like, I truly understand the way where this maybe was a subject in therapy this week for me, because I have been used to doing so much, doing. And I think the more nuanced you get in your art and what you want to say, the more like glue some of the jobs that, or like the bookings, even the logisticals become, because if you could be, you would just be constantly doing art in a field or playing games or laughing with friends, because that is the living of the art.
Well, I wonder if it comes from being an athlete, because people that are used to the cycle of being an athlete, it's less common that an athlete has to like book their own practices or something, like Never. You're in the structure of somebody saying, hey, you got to show up at 5 a.m. for swim practice or you're off the team. And especially if you have Slavic ability to grind through things, then, it's the thing that you just have to do, right? And
it's also the way it was the mutual honoring, right? So they set it up. They created this space for me to become a better athlete in. So I honor it with my discipline and my commitment. And it is a symbiotic relationship, whereas here it is a little like, book it, and then if you don't get enough crowd in, we're going to make you pay, and this and the. So it doesn't feel as connective. Well, it's also one-sided, because I think one of the hardest things about being an artist is that no one's asking for you to do it. So if you decide all the rest of this year that you're not going to do any work on your creative life, literally no one is going to be like, hey, where's that? How come you're not working on something? Like we can go years sometimes just getting by. And, that was part of the reason why I did a second show this year, because I'm still touring the first show. I'm still touring Scarlet, but I didn't want to just say, oh, I did this show. It went well. I'm touring it for the next 3 years. I'm not working on anything new, because no one's asking for anything new from me. No one's begging me for the next album. I am. But what I hear you say, I'm like, I find it so lovely. It's like you're speaking to the gentle parenting and love of obligation, and how obligation can, get you out of bed in the morning. Obligation confines really can be apparent to your art with you.
Yeah. And also, it's nice that you say like you are demanding the next album. What happens then is you create something and then people are like, oh, I'm so glad you made this. Right. But I don't know if it's capitalism or
it is.
how many things there are to choose from. You know, you could take your favorite band in the whole world and you could find out that they just played in your town yesterday and you never even heard about it because there's so much noise out there. So it's much easier to not, because I had a day job for many years. If you have a day job, you can't not show up to work, right? But as an artist, it's very easy to like not show up to work every day. And that when you ask like the I'd say that's my main resistance.
I so appreciate us kind of finding this because I think more artists need to hear this. And it doesn't look necessarily like morning pages. That's not what we mean when we say sort of like routine and regiment, because that's why I liked Fringe. Because to me, the easiest part of the day was the hour I did the show. That was like, whatever. It was everything else around it. It was the routine. It was the making art, not because of capitalism, but because it needed structure to flow. It needed reps to get good, just as I needed to hit the volleyball against the garage for 9 hours a day. And it wasn't work. It wasn't, I'm slugging it. It was like, nope, this is just a part. This is the exact same thing as the show. This is the exact same thing as the game. And what you're saying, I think, is really important because we either make it like this heroic thing or difficult, or when it's just like, you need to get told to brush your teeth when you're little. Everyone needs structure, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, and I think the difficult thing is that we have to manage ourselves to a certain degree.
A big degree, especially in this, self-produced sort of, we'd all love to be, Marilyn and get a 3-picture deal with MGM sort of situation.
Right.
As I assume that's your story and that's what you want to be.
No one is handing out three Fringe show deals. There's no studio handing those out. Imagine if you knew that you'd be funded to go to Fringe the next 3 years.
If I knew I was funded to go to Fringe the next year, I would be insane. I would do the most insane art. I would. Do you know what I would do? I would orchestrate an entire show for one person. Oh. You know what I mean? Like,
I thought about this. Actually, I wanted to. I could never afford this. I would love to book like my space last year was 87 seats. I would love to have me do a solo show and hire 85 actors and only sell 2 tickets. And then at the end of the show, the 2 people realize the entire show's been for them. But like,
I actually got chills. This is, I
think that'd be hilarious.
Not only would that be hilarious, it would be a holy experience.
Yeah.
Like, and I here's me, producer brain. I'm going, you better each for your Fringe show, $500 a ticket, obviously.
Right.
And it's like, and we're telling these people it's worth it. You don't understand. You are going to completely dispel your idea of community and self.
I love that.
Well, we are getting to my final segment, which is a little amorphous, ambiguous, and I spend 100 years explaining it every time, which is cool. And I appreciate you speaking to this process, and also appreciate you speaking to the process outside of it, because that is kind of my story in the same way of what has made my art possible. But this final segment is called Thank You for Holding My Poems. And it is inspired by the Russian poet Anna Akhmatova, who during the Great Terror in Russia, it was illegal for her to publish her poems because they were of resistance and revolution. So what she did is she asked her creative friends over the course of 30 years to each memorize edits of the same poem.
Oh.
And to me, it is the most magnificent, holy experience as artists that we get to hold each other's poems, that we get to trust each other with something unfinished and incomplete, that we get to ask another person to hold a different version of us. And I'm wondering, when you hear that story, I say in a Juliette Binoche Chocolat way, what is a moment that just comes to your mind where you either held for someone a poem or felt like your poems were held? And it doesn't have to be an artistic experience. For me, in my play, it is when a gay male nurse in Milwaukee bumped into me and said I was pretty on the worst day of my life. And I will hold him in my heart forever and ever. And he is so important to my art. And so I would love for you to share what comes to mind.
I mean, the thing I did think about immediately was something from a show.
Really great.
It was this guy, Stuart Bowden, who I think is from Australia and did a whole show about, I don't even really remember. He was basically dressed up as a big bug. And
love him. Already love him.
Basically about like, I know. I mean, my guess it was like the life cycle of bugs or something. And it was about death and that kind of stuff. And at the end of the show, he sang this song that sort of went like, it was something like, I'll live for every day. I'll thank every single day with you, with you, with you. Something like that. And he basically kept singing it and encouraging people to sing it with him. And then had all of us, like every single member of the audience, come up on stage and sing it and lay down on the ground. So we were singing this song about every single day with you, and then the lights just like faded. And we were all sort of
with
like
everyone on the stage?
Yeah, everyone on the stage. And so we all sort of just died together in a way, you know? It was like, it was a song about someone who died and how like keeping their memory alive would like, that you'd sustain someone's memory by thinking about them every day. And then we all sort of participated in, it was a very like ritualistic moment where we all laid down together, we sang a song and the lights went out. And that was a little bit of like the moment when you throw a tennis ball in the air and it just sort of stays and hovers for a second and then like the lights went out. That's how it felt.
Oh, that is, well, it's pure ceremony. It's what you say with casting a spell.
Yeah.
That's beautiful.
Yeah. That's the kind of stuff I love.
Oh, I can feel it when you say it. That is such a beautiful poem to hold, because also like every person on that stage in that moment, like that's what created that moment. No, that again, you can recreate that experience, but that one is yours. Like that is magnificent. Oh, thank you for sharing your poem, Chris.
Yeah, sure.
I will hold it. So we're kind of at the end. I appreciate you so much for being here.
Thank you.
You want to share anything of where they can find you?
I'm going to try to do Sardines maybe once every other month in LA in 2025. And then I'll be working on whatever this work in progress is for August 2025. We'll see what it is.
Well, we know what it is. It's 2 people, each ticket, $500.
That's right. Yeah.
And it's a work in progress for $500.
Yeah, sure.
Oh my goodness. Thank you so much, Chris. Everybody, please go see all of those. And I end by saying to my whole audience, oh my God, you're so pretty. Worse Than You with Mo Fry Pasick is hosted by me, Mo Fry Pasick. You can learn more about this week's guest and the Worse Than You team by checking out the show and episode copy. Worse Than You with Mo Fry Pasick is executive produced by Erica Ghetto, Mariah Gossett, and Lauren Mandel for Good Get and Disco Nap Productions. Oh my God, you're so pretty.
I'll live for every day. I'll thank every single day with you, with you, with you.